Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
WESN.
One of the weirdest things in life is to have the realization that there is no such thing as a society free from death. Beyond natural causes, including tragic young people dying from freak medical situations that we have yet to be able to fully comprehend, unnatural ending of human life, unfortunately, is something that will occur when humans have congregated in significant numbers. It's just the reality of the world we live in. Unlike the animal kingdom, we do not kill each other for food, but we will kill each other. The question, of course, is the rate. And it's very strange in the sense that here I am as a young person. I can't remember how young, but it was well before I finished school. I partially understood that concept, that it was impossible for a large population to have a murder rate of 0. But I am someone who does get upset at even an individual murder, as I did, maybe not to the degree that I have in the past, but one cannot read about the murder of a child, of a baby, and be unfeeling, because then it's not a statistic. And more importantly, even acknowledging the fact that, look, you get a metropolitan population, you're going to get some people doing some things. An 11-month-old is usually not caught up in those things. So, looking at the big picture is not about any one particular murder, but rather it's about how far the situation has gone out of control. And usually, the warning signs and the alarm bells and the panic cries happen a lot sooner in other jurisdictions than it did here. Or it did happen here, I was just too young to really take it in. The difference is it happened here, and then we went to 200 murders a year. And we continued panicking, and then we went to 3, then to 4, then to 5, then recently to 6. Now, trying to deal with crime, we want to see strategies. We want to see new things implemented. And there are a lot of issues, and if you ask any one person what's going on with the crime situation in the country, you'll get a lot of different perspectives that will each legitimately give you different starting points by which to, recommend solutions. You might say it's the prisons, you might say it's the police, you might say it's the government, you might say it's the schools, you might say it's the lack of a village, the education system, the diet, the economy. So many different perspectives and angles to tackle the problem. But I guess it's not necessarily about tackling the problem, but the lacking in tackling the problem. Now, one of the things with regards to killings is who watches the watchers. Of course, there's the situation that happened with Mr. Samaru, and people have been protesting that. While that's going on, mother of Fabian Richards was, I believe, there demonstrating alongside other members of the general public. Her son was killed in a police shooting. Now, I'm not here to adjudicate the rightfulness or wrongfulness of the shooting, but rather to look at the practical situation of the investigation. Because the mother of the deceased lamented that after 4 years, she has received no update on the state of the investigation into his killing. The investigator, Mr. Neil Brandon John, has died. However, we haven't gotten any answer as yet. The officers who did the killing are on desk duty. Why is it? Because we from the ghetto, we can't get justice as yet. It was very hurtful because we went through the same thing, speaking about what's going on right now with the investigation of Mr. Samaru, because the family feels as though things aren't happening and they're getting run around and they're just being fed, quote, breadcrumbs. Now, why I bring it up isn't to condemn the police, but to highlight an issue we have with any sort of potential wrongful death. And this is the light version. 4 years. 4 years, and the investigator has died. And I'll make my point. I just wanted to also, there's a situation with 5 people freed after spending almost a decade on remand, awaiting trial. A decade. So on one hand, we have an investigation that lasts for years, and granted, I don't expect investigators to die in the midst of a 4-year-long investigation. I don't think it's quite that bad, right? But it highlights the possibility that some of these investigations go on for so long, witnesses might die or become unreachable. The investigating officers might die or maybe retire or what have you. The point is, the cases are taking long to get through. And then the court matters are taking long to get through. A decade on remand. I mean, on some level, you can't keep someone on death row for more than, 5 years? But you can have them a decade on remand facing a murder charge. In theory, the people on death row are guilty of murder. These are innocent people, legally speaking, with a murder charge on their head, all things being equal. And I say all that to say that now the Minister of Justice, a minister who I quite honestly have on occasion forgotten, because we haven't really heard anything from him, and his portfolio has been lightened from between now and when he was appointed. But the Minister of Justice has pointed to 2 new policies, one split sentencing, the other parole. with the goal of easing up the overcrowdedness in the prisons. And I find that to be an interesting angle to start when, as far as I'm aware, at least with regards to this minister, he was supposed to be dealing in part with the judiciary. Because something tells me you could parole people all you want and give them split sentencing, but the people in remand ain't reached that stage yet. But more importantly, I don't necessarily know to what extent this is going to work, because these endeavors require a strong foundation in other aspects of the criminal justice system, which also have not been seen to. Essentially, you're saying the rehabilitation process that we can effect or utilize for inmates, it will work. We are so confident it will work, we can let them out early, whether due to split sentencing or via parole. And then at least with split sentencing, there's a part where they say the records are going to be sealed. I could have sworn I saw something about the records being sealed, but let me not, I can't find it again, so I don't want to put words in the minister's mouth. But hey, this is the code. We're offering a second chance. Come back into society. Complete your rehabilitation and you get a pass to reintegrate. If not, the court will intervene and you will serve your full sentence. Now, just exactly what is the rehabilitation process and why is it going to work this time? I'm not saying that prisoners haven't been rehabilitated, but the flip side to that is a significant amount of the court matters with regards to criminal offenses, just based on the sheer volume, statistically speaking, a lot of it has to be repeat offenders, unless you're saying a tenth of the adult population of the country are criminals. That seems a little bit unlikely, that a tenth of us are criminals. I personally do not know anyone that has been arrested and put into jail. I kind of know of, I know people who know people, but I don't. So all the adults I know, 1 in 10 are not criminals. But that is, on some level, the amount of cases before the courts, as far as I've been made aware by a defense attorney. So, and then of course, once they're out, there's supposed to be a whole series of, they have to check in, they're on probation. That's what the split sentencing is. You're locked up for a time and then you're put on probation for a time. Electronic monitoring, mandatory participation in rehabilitation programs, regular reporting to parole or probation officers. All right. Again, are all those things well in place and working properly? And then that doesn't speak to the challenges of rehabilitation. And of course, you have to catch the criminals for this to matter. But this is just to reduce the bill on the prison service. And I wonder if this is just low-hanging fruit to try to find some ways to save money as opposed to actually, I don't know, dealing with the issues. So, now we're in a, I don't know. Given the fact that we haven't necessarily heard the government speak with regards to other aspects of the criminal justice system, I'm trying to figure out exactly what is it they're hoping to accomplish here. I mean, right now, we don't really have a proper social support framework for our students in school. I'm supposed to believe that we're going to have effective rehabilitation programs, unless the state is basically going to palm these poor souls off to NGOs, because we know there are NGOs that are doing a lot of work. And then, of course, now, the mechanism for parole, nothing could go wrong with that, right? It's not as though we don't have questions with regards to the prison service even more than the police service. But let me leave that there. I would have thought one of the first things to do is figure out how to reduce the backlog in the judiciary so you could reduce remand, because that's multiple issues there, as opposed to, and I guess this is ironic, right? The government that's supposed to be selling itself as tough on crime, the priority is not the people in remand who might be innocent. The priority is not with regard to detection rate on crime in order to get swift justice. The priority is try to get the convicted out of the prison system as quickly as possible. All the while, this is convicted people of a criminal element that the TTPS does not, or the leadership of the police service, does not see the need to have things like body cameras, because they're all apparently guilty. We don't need to worry about having to exonerate our officers from being in shootings where the circumstances are questionable. I don't know. I mean, quote, for years we have struggled with delays in the court system. It's impossible to maintain a 1943 framework where probation is only revoked upon conviction. Sorry, this is Faris Awari. The court ought to revisit probation status the moment a probation is charged, and I propose that this be included in law. Perhaps that might have its own kettle of fish. But all of this doesn't really deal with delays in the court system. Although Mr. Awari is looking to circumvent, to some extent, the trial process, from what I understand it. Now, you would actually think I'm kind of contradicting myself here, because the whole philosophy of this is summed up by independent Senator Vieira. Punishment alone does not always produce justice, and incarceration alone does not necessarily produce rehabilitation. I understand that. I just don't really have confidence that we could say we'll rehabilitate them and then it'll just magically happen. Now, a couple other things. First of all, another union got 10%. And this is interesting because apparently some other unions use their salaries as benchmark for their negotiations. which I believe is what somebody warned the government, one stakeholder, basically say, you start the ball rolling with 10%. It's not going to be limited. You can't give some 10 and some 5. At some point, the goalpost is going to change. Now the question is, can we afford another $1 billion of cash payouts? Which, to be fair, not all of the back pay is going to be in cash, but $1 billion of it is. When is that payment going to be made? Will it be added to the current deficit? Because then that means we're close to $7 billion in the deficit just on back pay alone. And I'm fairly certain the deficit does not reflect the bill that the Ministry of Education is supposed to be paying with regards to things like construction and renovation of facilities and maintenance. There's a school on Tragarete Road that is, the billboard still says AFCL. Just before the roundabout, the Roxy roundabout. It's almost like if that's been abandoned for, I don't know how many years at this point. Now, the situation with Carl, just to highlight something with regards to what I've been saying. At one point, Carl had $2.17 billion in deficit as one entity in this country. And let's not forget, the deficit in the national budget was technically only $3 billion. We know that deficit number is not going to stay there. But that is just to show you what to highlight. And this is 2016 numbers. This is to highlight the type of finances that we're talking about with regards to Carl. And Carl is asking for a bailout at a time when we probably can't afford a bailout because, A, even with regards to the prison service, they're trying to save some money. This goes into the whole situation with the nurses. Now, the nurses have been complaining that they're understaffed, and they've been complaining about that for a while. Apparently, there have been at least 2 intakes of nurses, and I believe the second one, 15 new nurses. They're the second batch of nurses going through the orientation process. I'm not sure if it's the entirety of North Central Regional Health Authority or the Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex. But they noted they were the second batch, 15 new nurses. One of the things that I would like to know is exactly why did they not do this sooner? Why did they not hire more nurses sooner? As opposed to say things like the overtime rate needs to be reduced. Because one of the reasons why you have an overtime rate is because you have to get people to cover shifts that you don't have enough staff to cover. I would hope that this is not one of those situations where healthcare has a certain amount of overtime just expected in its staff. Because what happened in this situation was interns and the like, their working hours got longer. There's a lot of risk with regards to the standard of healthcare when you do things like that. If pilots or truck drivers need to have mandatory rest periods, I find it's crazy that doctors and nurses don't. But somehow they have the budget to hire new nurses. Somehow they found new nurses to hire. And there's a part of me that wants to know, A, how long could you keep this up? Keep hiring new nurses until the problem goes away. And B, will the new nurses end up having some of the same complaints as the old nurses? How long will we be able to keep them? Or is it just going to be a situation where they work in our public health system, they get some experience, with the hopes of being headhunted by some sort of foreign recruitment agency to go to England or North America as experienced nurses? Because the overtime bill apparently for last year, I think, was something like $30 to $36 million. And to me, that's not an issue of we're paying too much in overtime. It's an issue of mismanagement, and you let your staffing levels collapse. Now they're hiring a whole set of nurses. I really would like to know where are all of them coming from? And how sustainable is this? And why wasn't this done before? And if you're doing this, why did you have to apparently cut overtime rates in the first place? The whole situation just seems very back to front. Too much unnecessary drama. Now, maybe some of it is inherited from the previous administration, but at the flip side, it's been almost a year. We're about less than a month away from the anniversary mark. It's not as though the Nursing Association has been silent, brewing for quite some time. And if the overtime bill was too much, then that you had to cut it as opposed to just rectify your staffing level problems, then justify to me the increases in staffing levels now. That's why I say it's back to front. This should have been the step that you did first, not the reduction in overtime pay. And Lord only knows if we actually have the financial liquidity to meet all of these commitments, because now they've just transferred the issue from one to the next if the answer to that is no. All right. And of course, this protest, from what I understand, according to one member of the association, was not formally organized by the association, if I remember that correctly. And it seems to be organically spreading. And it could just be a situation where the members of the association, the nurses themselves, are so frustrated, this is somewhat spontaneous. Is the increasing staffing levels, is it going to be done effectively enough to rectify a lot of the problems the nurses have? Because it's one thing to just say, we'll hire more nurses, boom, we have more nurses. Where are you hiring them from? How much experience do these apparently new nurses have? Are they experienced nurses that were without a job for all this time? Are they fresh graduates from nursing school? Because this is healthcare. The last thing you want is to have someone monitoring your life signs and they're not necessarily good at their job, or they're not experienced enough yet to be good at their job. We'll take that break, and when we come back, we'll welcome Ashraf. Stay tuned. This is Talking About WSND Content Capital. We'll be right back after this.
Hi, I am Emiliana Beechan, and I am a mental health and conflict resolution consultant. Welcome to Mind Matters, the show where we explore the intricate world of mental health and the art of conflict resolution. Join us as we hear from mental health professionals, conflict resolution experts, and everyday people who have transformed their lives through understanding and communication. Mind Matters, WESN Content Capital.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Nah, you don't need to register nothing. You don't need, we can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit. and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploiting the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Most common presentation are menstrual disturbances, so prolonged and heavy and often very painful periods. So rather than a fairly normal 5-6 day menstrual cycle period, they might get incredibly heavy bleeding for 2, 3, 4, 5 days, and it might be prolonged to 7. This bleeding month on month on month can then lead to a drop in the hemoglobin levels and anemia, which can be very tiring. They can also be very painful. Some women will bleed constantly and not have a cycle at all. They'll bleed for 30 days, 40, 50, 60 days.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
I'm back and talking about the WSN Content Capital Show, Michael Small, and if I seemed out of it this morning, it was because I confused myself with 2 different articles on the same topic, and I felt that I was going crazy. I thought maybe this was it when, I read things that did not exist. I honestly started to think that live on air, because there was one aspect of the government's proposal that I wanted to speak on that had me the most concerned, maybe not exactly why you would think when you first hear what it is, but luckily, not only do I have someone to tell me, no, I'm not crazy, it is there, but also someone with relevant law enforcement experience to speak to some of these issues directly. Of course, I'm speaking of Ashraf Ali. Ashraf.
Morning, Sean, and I find you was very pensive this morning. Why? What went wrong?
Because unfortunately, I read an article, and this was the point that I found the most interesting. And let me not misquote it now, right? Let me get it. Offenders, the new legislation or the new policies being proposed by the Minister of Justice said that also offers offenders the opportunity to have a clean slate and have their court records sealed, enabling them to apply for jobs and visas. And in my mind, while I understand the motivation to try to implement something like this, instinctively, I feel as though this is not necessarily going to solve the problem the way that Minister Maraj thinks it is, and it will only potentially lead to other problems in the same area.
So, Sean, morning again.
Morning.
Morning to Trinidad and Tobago. This is not a new situation. In 2025, the previous administration did, in fact, was putting proposal to consider the same thing of sealing records. And some of the arguments is that the certificate of character that you got, is there any situation or has there been an increase in situations where persons who have criminal records, based on their criminal records, are debarred from getting jobs? I don't know if there's any statistical data to support it at this point in time, because when you apply for a certificate of character, a good character, if you have a record, it will be written on the back of it, right? For traffic offenses, over a period of time, you can apply to get it expunged off your record, because after a certain amount of years, it can be taken off your record. Now, it has its pros and cons behind it, but my take on it right now, has there been an increase in the number of persons who are questioning or challenging their criminal record status when it comes to jobs? Now, if you're setting a precedent on, it means that if you're talking about sealing records, there must be records sealed for certain offenses and certain type of offenses that I think the administration is looking to consider. But then when it comes to business persons, if somebody say the records are sealed, it begs the question now that somebody always be questioning, well, if the records are sealed, then I would like to know why you're sealing the record for, because what was your criminal history previously for that record to be sealed, because I really want to employ you and know that whosoever I'm employed, who is employed in my company or my business has a good record. Mm-hmm. Sometimes transparency is better than none. No transparency in this context, because if it is that a person has a record, then the employer will make a decision based on not the record alone. Could be it shouldn't be on the record alone, but the engagement with the individual. After the interview, that person could be a viable candidate for employment. People make mistakes. And I don't think one mistake or two mistakes that has a minor situation should be the benchmark for you not being able to develop yourself and earn an income.
Well, I think that is one of the issues that I thought about immediately. If you seal the record, what will probably happen is, for employers, the criteria will change, right? In the sense of, at the end of the day, you have to explain the gap in employment. Sealing the record is not going to fill the gap. You can't have a fake job to fill the gap. So there's going to be missing information of your work history. And at some point, if the public knows, well, now records are being sealed for certain crimes, right? It might go from, oh, well, employers are giving convicts a hard time, not giving them a chance to, employers just seeing a gap and just assuming, oh, well, you probably went to prison. So I'm not going to bother, right? I'll give you some make-up excuse, and I'm not going to bother. And that's why I'm like, I don't think it's necessarily going to solve the problem, right? And of course, now part of it is I was asking you, is it going to be that we're going to know that the records are sealed, so we're going to know the person was in prison, or is it that there'll be no indication whatsoever?
So when for my understanding of how when records are sealed, it is not generally known across law enforcement. So let's say you go for a certificate of character. When you pull up trying to get a certificate of character, run your prints, you would see that, okay, this person was convicted of X, Y, and Z, but it's a sealed record. So you would not know the context of it. No. That and all has to be dealt with differently, because when you are going to present a certificate of character to an individual, if you say no records, that is not true. If you say sealed records, that raises more questions than answers, because you can't put sealed record for an employer, because I will be I am more suspicious now as to, or more curious as to know what offenses have you committed to have a seal record at that point in time. So it has more questions to answer. My thing about it is that for too long...
Well, it's not just that, but also, depending on what's sealed, the employers might just assume, well, whatever the worst thing is, all of y'all are that. And you see, like the lack of, as you said, the lack of transparency in this case can actually be counterproductive to what you're trying to achieve. I'm not saying that it's working as is. I'm just saying, given the mindset of how employers view people with any sort of criminal record, I don't think they're going to just, you know, oh, well, we can't see what it is, I guess we'll just hire you then because of it. No, the mindset and the perception, whether rightful or wrongful, will still remain, and they'll just adjust how they operate within the new framework.
At the end of the day, we will have to look and see how it is drafted and how it is argued and what is the final intended outcome with respect to this. Right now, sometimes it is unfair to many persons who may have committed an offense, like a traffic violation. And let's put it this way. Let's say you commit a traffic violation of drinking and driving. Mm-hmm. And you go to an employer and you're applying for a driving job. I would be, I am not good, and if that has been sealed, then I run the risk of employing you as a driver, knowing that on your private capacity, at some point in time, you were convicted of drinking and driving.
No, here's the thing, and I guess you might not be the best person to answer this, but I would have a hard time agreeing with anyone who says, oh, the employer has liability because they hired someone with a DUI, when the records were sealed. So it's like, well, I'm not legally supposed to know
because
this.
Because you didn't have all the information to make a proper assessment.
Then one of the things that I thought about is, can the state open itself up to lawsuits because of things like this? If you have things that are very specific to that example.
No.
Or like that example.
Here's the twist to that. The individual, from their own personal perspective, they can declare, yes, I was involved in an incident. My records are sealed, but the incident involved a drinking and driving. I am not saying that's individual.
But think about the whole point of making these changes is to allow the individual to not disclose it.
And that's a personal choice.
No, but I know that. But on some level, the government is telling these individuals, right, whatever they might have on their record, we have this new policy, this new law in place that says we're going to seal your records. It's literally implying to them, don't say what it is.
But Sean, it is not as simple as just say we seal in the records. There are specific type of records, specific offenses, specific circumstances where the court will have to agree, based on the outcome of the matter, that the records will be sealed, right? It is not about all offenses records are going to be sealed.
Right.
So
we're kind of jumping the gun just a little bit.
Right. So we do not know as yet what type of offenses the record will be sealed for, and they will have certain circumstances that we'll have. But I am saying, on a general note, it has its pros and cons, right? Now, even with what we deal with employment across the board, where records are currently not sealed, certain records are not currently sealed. There are some matters that may when it comes to children and all kinds of things, right? Even now, when you present a certificate of character, you present a certificate of character with saying that you have a certificate of good character. All that says to you, or the employer, is that this individual has no criminal offense, has no offense registered against them. They have never been charged or committed an offense. That doesn't say you have a good character.
Right.
This is where the interview process comes in. So if you're relying on just a certificate of character alone as your benchmark, then you have a little problem, because that only simply says that that person has never gone through the court procedures or have never been charged or arrested or anything like that. You could have been arrested by police, but you have no criminal matter because you was never charged. That is all that certificate.
You've been arrested multiple times,
and you have never been charged. So you do not have a record, a criminal record against your name. So if you're taking, so it is not just simply saying, hey, listen, I was debarred from getting a job because my certificate of character. No, it's your character is the key.
I mean, you see this around the world, but is it fair to say in Trinidad and Tobago, basically, for the vast majority of people that were, once you're arrested, there's a stigma attached to you, for better or worse. Right?
And that too has its challenges. It's human nature and how we look at certain persons, because we believe a certain person who are arrested, they're guilty before proven innocent. We always have the worst to say if somebody went before the jail, went and make jail and come out of jail, it means that they're no good and they come out of jail. So they are criminal and they make jail and they are con and all kind of things. They call them, and they're not affording them opportunities. This is one sector of society where even in the rehabilitation process in the prisons, it is difficult when they come outside back into society to be reintegrated, and they learn from their mistakes, but they can't get anything else. Now, look at how many persons are difficult, and this is one of the challenges. I'm not saying people that all PH taxi drivers have criminal records, but it shows that whenever you have to get a taxi badge, one of the criteria is a certificate of character. If you have a negative certificate of character where you have anything registered against you, the likelihood of getting a taxi badge goes to zero. So then, many of these persons cannot get a taxi badge to be legitimate. They continue working as PH drivers.
I think part of the issue is, look, I don't think all of the criminals in society, they were born criminals, right? Yes, you will have, it's hard to say to what extent that there will be those that are naturally inclined to be lawbreakers and immoral people. But generally speaking, you could say there will be some of those in a group, right?
Yes, there.
A small amount, a big amount, it's hard to put a number to that. But you can't say that it's literally the entire criminal population of any society. It's because those were just all bad apples. There was no hope. I mean, in part, that's what the rehabilitation means, right? So we get that, but let's look at it from a wider point of view. We kind of have programs for young people and to try to discipline them and to teach them all throughout. And I'm not saying that it's because they're bad. I'm saying we haven't necessarily shown that we've figured out how to actually do this work when it comes to an easier situation, a child, more malleable, more, not so entrenched with their beliefs and experience. Now when you get to a hardened criminal, and it's not that they want to be a hardened criminal, but you go through the process of having to live in maximum security prison and stuff like that. You can't be, a soft, innocent lamb and expect to survive. It's going to change you on some level. Like at that point, are we prepared to really say, yes, we could rehabilitate all these guys and we know what we're doing, and then we could do things like seal records and basically tell society, don't worry about it, we got this. We fix them.
No, I could comment up to a certain extent with respect to that. With my experience dealing with reoffenders, when it comes to the prison system and the level of rehabilitation processes and systems that have in place, I would not speak about it because that's for the prison to speak about. My engagement with a lot of persons who have been in and out of prison,
right?
Sometimes they say that it's difficult, and sometimes when you interview a number of them, and they say, boss, it hard. When we come out here, we are getting nothing to do because nobody trusts us anymore. I mean, I make a mistake. I made a mistake when I was young, and now it affected me throughout my life. I could empathize with that because, yes, you may have made a mistake because we know that circumstances, you may not be fully in control of that circumstance because of a lot of factors. Just like what is happening with a number of the youths, we can't blame all of them because environmental factors and other factors are causing them to be in some activities. But we don't give holistically, we don't look at it holistically and say, listen, yeah, you made a mistake, depending on the circumstance or the offense that you have committed, they're getting the opportunity to even be part of society now and contribute towards society because we have a stigma attached to some of them. So it's a different approach that we have to look at, or I should say, we have to look at it from different sides.
Because I think one of the things is, the mistake is the debate kind of settles into they are all this or they are all that. And in my mind, I'm sure there are those who told you that meant it.
Yeah,
that they genuinely wanted to change and there's resistance. But the problem is Peter's paying for Paul because there are those who they say that they want to change, right? Life being hard is not about, ooh, I can't get a job. It is the, oh God, you want me to work 40 hours a week? Like, we already have young people who are not that hardened criminals or don't have that bad of a mindset, who have that bad of a work ethic, right? So it's not hard to think some criminals became criminals because their work ethic is poor.
Sometimes that is wonder if your work ethic is really criminal.
Right, and the thing is, it's like, for you know, yes, I'm sure, like I said, there are those who say it's hard because they're genuinely trying and it is hard. But then there are those who say, nah man, this civilian life is hard and because I don't like it.
So, well
and it's, how do you sort it out?
It's not that
because you're not going to know who's who until the bad ones actually show you who they are, and by then something probably went wrong.
It is not black and white. There are a lot of gray areas in it, but I am all for putting whatever legislation they're putting in place, and let's hear how it is going to play out. How it's going to draft, and what is the consequences towards sealing of records and the type of offenses that records may be sealed upon. Now, here's the other aspect of it. If you divulge a listing of type of records, once I want to seal you, or automatically I view you falling in one of those categories already.
Yeah.
So I am just saying that, Sean, your record is sealed. I mean, you might have been one of the persons in this whole category.
Yeah, but you're not gonna assume the most benign thing.
No, I'm putting you on number one.
Now,
especially if you're locally part.
I mean, of course, then there is the risk. Look, as I mentioned before, it's not going to be a lot of the society. It's not going to be a large fraction. It's going to be a very small minority of people who genuinely are antisocial. In fact, even I think it's sociopaths or psychopaths. Most psychopaths are not necessarily lawbreakers. They have people who basically, they describe their lack of human emotion saying, look, I don't feel what the rest of you feel, but why would I choose to do things that will hurt other people, right? Despite the fact that they don't comprehend or experience emotion like how the rest of us do. I say that to say, though, there are those ones who are genuinely bad eggs.
So
and to what degree can this system be potentially exploited?
I'm looking at it from another perspective also, where we have some pros with respect to it, because we have a lot of young offenders. Young offenders that circumstances and poor decision making, in some cases, they end up in problems with running afoul of the law, and they may have been arrested and charged and convicted in some way. Is that going to be the narrative for their entire history, or what what persons are going to view them for their entire life? Is that what you're going to judge them on? And I am saying that in some circumstances, sealing those records might give those individuals an opportunity to put aside or change what, not by their own doing, by actually saying that nobody can question whatever I did, that has been done, that is history. I am looking to go forward now. So there's a positive towards it at this point in time. You can look at it from that positive view. Because minor offenses, minor crimes, as well as some traffic offenses, it shouldn't be the ones that, it shouldn't be the things that that will stay in you for your entire life. There needs to have, you should be given an opportunity to learn from those mistakes and contribute.
Well, ironically, for young offenders, to what extent could this be true? Sometimes the not so bad ones, the naive ones, they're caught up in the role that they think they should be playing. They're not really that bad, but maybe it's a defense mechanism. You know, maybe they just got enamored with the life, so they're trying to present themselves off as the biggest and the baddest. Meanwhile, some of the really bad ones might be polite and manipulative, and know what to say to work their way. And ironically, you know, and that's just to show how difficult it might be, because with your experience, I'm sure for the average person, just this is one of the things that makes juries kind of crazy. The average pair of anyone to just be able to really understand how to evaluate human nature when it comes to criminal activity. It's very easy to get it wrong. You could put as much as you could allow guilty people to maybe get off lighter. You could put innocent people in prison as well. And again, it comes back down to, I understand why we're doing this, but I feel as though we don't necessarily have a handle on getting it right, which is difficult no matter where you are. So if you know that it's difficult to be accurate, the supporting services around it, I feel as though, you know, it'll be a lot more palatable saying, all right, we're not necessarily going to always, you know, we paroled people, maybe we paroled a few too early. Yes, there's things in the bill to say, if you offend again, whatever, you know, you'll face consequences. And the trick is that you have to get to that consequence part. I mean, part of the issue right now is some of the gang members and the like, they don't fear legal consequences. They already figured they're going to die in a gang war. What is your arrest? How big of a threat is that to me, right? So if the supporting things are wrong, offering probation and stuff, the issues we have with the criminal justice system, I feel, will potentially make this endeavor that much more difficult and that less effective, on top of all of the already difficult circumstances that are just natural to trying to figure out who deserves parole and who doesn't deserve parole, who deserves lighter sentencing, split sentencing, and who just, you should lock them up one time.
Well, there are challenges in the judicial system. Nobody can deny that. But those are some of the risks that we have to take when it comes to trying to improve our judicial system. Not everything is going to be perfect. You may end up getting the wrong decisions. Sometimes persons believe that lock them up. Yeah, lock up somebody is okay. Innocent and proven guilty. That guilt means that you have to determine whether or not there's beyond a reasonable doubt where there is sufficient evidence, circumstantial or hard evidence as the case may be, where it is that a jury has no choice but based on everything that's presented to them, the person is considered to be guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and that is why a reasonable individual. Now, some persons might not say, might say that the sentence doesn't deserve the crime, right? What they get sentenced for, that is not, they didn't deserve, or that is less than what they deserve. I mean, I can't judge. I'm not going to judge that. My personal view might be different. It will be different, depending on certain things. But that is our judicial system. And if we want to be a law-abiding country, we have democracy. Part of what we have to accept what the judicial system brings to us. It is slow I would say, and it is slow because it is supported by other mechanism, which is also slow in the way that we operate. And it brings a question that is very interesting, that I heard a comment by tutor where they are saying right now that police officers in schools is not serving any purpose. And here's the argument behind that, is that they are under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Education, or the principal in school is responsible for their actions. Did I not tell you that when I said that police officers will be going in schools, and when you're going to schools, what is the role of the principal? Because the principal has the control of the school.
Or what is who makes the policy, what is the reporting structure?
Because the Ministry of Education, and I just digressing a little bit to show that we put systems in place. When it's time to operationalize it, we have challenges. The Ministry of Education has a policy and a procedure when it comes to who has the responsibility for the school. That's the principal. He or she is responsible for the school, the infrastructure, the teachers, the safety and security of the students once they are in their care during the course of school, right? Even the security officer falls under the supervision of the principal because they have been guided by rules of the school. Police officers who are going there, yes, they represent the state, but the state doesn't have control of the principal, the school environment, the Ministry of Education environment, so they have to work hand in hand. At what responsibilities and where the authorities lie, because police officers have arrested children in school, have arrested and charged children in school. There lies the question. There lies the question, and there lies the challenge.
I mean, look at it this way, because the situation, I think part of it is the situation in schools, it just grew so large that the normal mechanisms couldn't deal with it, right? When you're basically suspending a student ad nauseum because you can't follow the guidelines, because it will mean how a whole slew of students are going to just be expelled, and then what, right? Now I say that to say, look at this, consider this, because we complain about the detection rate for murders and all that. I've complained about that for years, right? But consider this, with such a lower detection rate, so there's not that many people charged, right, yes, compared to the amount of murders. There's a backlog of criminal cases in the court. Imagine if the detection rate for crime was 50%. How would the judiciary get anything done? Things will take 40 years. So that tells me it's not enough to try to, open up the valve on the back end. There are greater issues at play with regards to all of these, and to what extent is money just being thrown down the drain? Some of the callers pointed it out with regards to remand. But the philosophy of this, though, you touched on it. It goes back to the population. What do they want with regards to the approach against crime? Do they want a responsible, holistic approach? Or do they want an aggressive, let's deal with the violence now by any means necessary, and then we'll sort it out later? And I feel as though at times the population, I don't know if it's the same people kind of trying to have it both ways whenever the emotions hit them, whatever the narrative is of the news story of the moment, or if it's different aspects of the population with different priorities. But we've seen the population basically call for tougher measures against crime and bring in the army. But then we've also seen the population say, hey, they're bombing boats without due process. This is bad, and so on. And look, we complain about police shootings, right? Let's just not worrying about the innocence or guilt of the situation. Police shoot people, there could be all great cops. You're not going to have zero police shootings if you want the police to deal with violent crime. It is impossible.
So Sean, I like where you're going with that, because there's a lot of call for increased enforcement. We have a lawless society. Good. So if we go along that narrative, now, you have to have a balance. The balance, there must always be a balance, because when you talk about enforcement of the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, what do we normally see on a regular basis?
Well, hold on. Before we get Shagonas and Mova calling to complain, I said this on Tuesday, I believe. Where Ashraf is coming from and where you all are coming from is not the same issue. It is two different things, because their whole thing is the lawless society, and your thing is, look, there are certain issues with regards to some of the laws.
So
right?
This is where I'm going with.
Okay.
We talk about enforcement of the laws.
Yes.
Good. When the public gets enforcement of the laws, who are the ones that complain about the enforcement of the laws? What specific sector? There's a specific sector of society that normally makes the amount of complaints.
Well, hold on. There's two that come to mind. One is whatever hotspot the presence is,
not yet,
right?
not
But
yet.
the other one is motorists.
That is, and this is what I'm saying. This is how the public views it. So I can understand what the Chaguanas and is looking at. So I have always said that enforcement of the laws cannot be traffic laws alone. This cannot be that the motorists on the streets are the one that being affected on a regular basis. However, there's also the principle behind policing and what road checks are designed for.
But I think the motorist example, it's just an example of the wider mindset of, I want you to be tough on the criminals, but I don't want to be inconvenienced in any way. And not just on the road, in any way.
But I am trying to be as objective as possible on both sides. But because law enforcement themselves shoot themselves in the foot literally, right? Because when you talk about law enforcement, the first activities that you see is road checks.
Yeah.
The traveling public are inconvenienced more than the criminals, or the persons who are living in the hotspots who are known offenders, who you know, and every time these incidents happen, police say, we know them. We know where the drug boxes are. We know where the hotspots are, but they are not being affected. The traveling public is on a regular basis.
Right.
And the argument behind it, or the justification is behind it, that criminals use vehicles. Yes, we know that. So then target the criminals who are using the vehicles. Why it is on the highway when people are going to work, you want to have a roadblock, and you're affecting the individuals. Why it is you're treating somebody who doesn't have a driver's permit like a criminal? It's a traffic offense. Why it is that you're inspecting a vehicle on the road?
Also, if the exercise is to try to arrest violent crime, not saying ignore the traffic offense, but this is not the end of the world.
But when we look at how, when we talk about enforcement and we hear increased presence, these are the people, these are the affected portion of the population that comes up to be, in some cases, they appear that they feel victimized, or they are being the one that are being felt the brunt of the law enforcement. Now, yes, there are hotspot areas, but here what I am asking the question here: why it is that you don't hear about an hotspot area being dealt with in a context of restricting their movements, putting them under pressure because they are also part and parcel, because you want to deal with the violent crimes, right? So it cannot be on a regular basis, and you hear the public coming out, because my experience sometimes when I go on road checks, you get a very negative approach one time. You're trying to be professional, you're being polite, and persons are upset with you because you are carrying out. Now you have a legitimate, you are looking at stopping vehicles, to check vehicles to make sure they are not traversing with illegal firearms and all of that. But the other little offenses that we're looking at, sometimes the persons believe that is the one that they're going for, because it's only about tickets.
Yeah.
And when you have law enforcement agencies not working in sync with each other when it comes to these type of things, because you have traffic wardens doing their own causing some problems at the same time. You have traffic license officers on their own because they have their own responsibility. Then you have police officers within the police service concentrating heavily on traffic. And do we hear much about any of the other type of activities that are taking place that the public will say, yeah, listen, the police service is targeting criminal elements and criminal areas to treat with violent crimes?
But you see, this is it kind of goes into how we have a very limited or short-sighted understanding of these things, right? Including with regards to rehabilitation.
Yes.
Because it's the mindset of the public to the criminal. So when I would say things in the last 4 years about innocent until proven guilty, due process of the law and all of these things, right? Why are you defending criminals? This is what I would be told,
yes,
right? And they want the gloves off. When you see the extreme example of what that looks like, because the Americans are still here, still striking apparently, we just don't hear it as much, right? It's no longer the big news, folks. Big news is all the way in the Middle East. Right? All of a sudden, people have an issue. And then now, you hear the public will say, you know, send in the army, whatever. Then you hear about a police shooting, regardless of the circumstances of it. All of a sudden, you hear, oh, well, we need, you know, holistic endeavors, and it can't just be about hard measures and victimization and stuff like that, And I bring all of that up to say we haven't even necessarily figured out as a public what our mindset is. And I fear that's really one of the things that you need to solve, because it all comes back down to what is the public willing to give to people trying to come back into society. If we just see crime as this problem that we want an action movie star to deal with, and then when we find out that real life is not as pretty as the movies, all of a sudden we want to be responsible, right? Like, we're not really engaged on, okay, what is reasonable? You know, what is reasonable for us to ask for? Reasonable expectations of law enforcement, including if we're inconvenienced at times, it is what it is, right? Because I'll be honest, I'm in a roadblock, I get frustrated, I silently, you know, cuss to myself. I'm not gonna be, as I wind down the window to the officer, what you want? I'm like, I know that, listen, I could be frustrated as much as I want in the privacy of my own mind. Well, right? But at the end of the day, trying to take out my frustrations on the officer, who is one cog in a big machine, no matter, even if he wasn't doing his job to the best of his abilities, ain't gonna help nothing, right? But that level of understanding, because then by having an understanding, people might better appreciate the fact that, look, if we want this whole society rehabilitation so that criminals have an opportunity to reform, which means that there will be some criminals that will have a pathway to come back, so then we don't have to worry about them being criminals no more. They'll return to being productive members of society. We have to give a little, right? We have to give a little. We can't just say it's someone else's problem.
And we can't afford to have a whole population within the prison system for rehabilitation when we could start the process before they even reach the prison. So our social programs, our rehabilitation or rehabilitation mindset of the youths of not getting into criminal activities has to start in some of these schools and in some of these schools and some of the communities.
Here's the catch with that. So it just came out that either Eric Williams or NCRHA hired 2 batches of nurses, the second one being 50. I don't know what the first one is, right? Yeah. And this is a scary thought. There's no blame here. According to some accounts, guidance counselors and social workers in the schools didn't have their contracts renewed. Now they're hiring nurses, and there's been a problem with not enough nurses. I don't think I could fault the government for saying we're going to cut the budget to the Ministry of Education, and they're going to have to cut some of these jobs because we want to hire more nurses because we have a shortage of these jobs. Like, if it's things like that, In situations where the money is being taken from one area to another because they're just saying, look, we think this need is greater than that need, it's not scary in the sense of the government. We're beyond what the government is, right or wrong. It's scary in the sense of we might have needs, real issues, and not enough money to solve all of them. And we're not talking about having pork and chicken on the shelf. We're talking about healthcare versus social services to help deal with crime. What do you prioritize in that situation? I have no idea.
And that is a big question, and that across the board the administration has to deal with, because reprioritization of the limited resources in terms of financial resources and directing it where it is most beneficial right now is important. Because, I mean, I could understand the nurses' situation. I can make an argument for other agencies at the same time, but I would not, because I don't want to damper the, or make it feel that I am belittling what the nurses are saying. The fact that they have shortages and the risk associated with those shortages, and you have to understand which one has a higher risk. People don't feel I'm belittling anybody's profession.
Yeah.
But we have to make the hard decision as to where the higher risk are when you're doing the risk. So when you're doing risk assessment, you look at the higher risk, and I'm saying the higher risk would have been in the hospital environment, the hospital system, because if you have shortage of nurses, it affects several aspects of it, and it affects the ability for the hospital system to provide proper care for the persons. That also has a rippling effect going on. So you want to have some level of stability and proper care when it comes to that. At this point in time, with all the other services, is the social services in a school environment priority when it comes to hospital, the nurses? There will always be arguments for against, but I don't see an issue with reassessing. And I always say, when you have a system or you have something, it is also very important to reassess and how you treat with certain situations, because things do pop up. And if at this point in time they are hiring nurses, in the short term, that's a good position. But holistically, we have to come up with a long-term method, because nurses are being trained coming out of school on a regular basis. And that becomes, and forgetting nurses, we're talking about students and young people are now coming out of school on a regular basis, right? How are they being placed into the working environment to contribute to society, whether private or public sector? This goes back to trying to increase the age of public servants. If you increase the age of public servants, you stymie the opportunity for persons to get into the system.
Listen, it doesn't seem as though we could afford to hire more individuals. I guess this is why you say it might be better to churn, I guess, the labor market and not hold on to people. But like, that goes on to we might not have enough money for social security type programs. Then if my fears are true, it puts a whole new question with regards to them 10% increases, just saying, right? And on some level, you could agree or disagree with 10%. I would argue it is something that can be debated, however, wherever the debate leads,
Yeah.
Right? Because it is kind of bad to still be on 2013 salaries, but then again, I'm sure there's a lot of people in the private sector who's like, I get a wage increase since 2003, 2013. Yeah, we have a call. I know. Every morning line caller, good morning. You on there?
Sure, Michael Small, good morning to you and Mr. Ali.
Morning.
Hope you all have a happy Easter.
Thank you. We hope you, same to you.
I try to understand how you all trying to make sense out of the madness that's going on in our country.
So,
and why I say madness, right?
Both of us are not fully.
You have a cadre of nurses who are short staffed in the first place. You're not paying them what they're really supposed to be getting. And instead of you trying to fill in this gap with the shortfall, you're pressuring them. Now they decide to retaliate. Now you're telling them you're going and hire other nurses. That is madness. You're supposed to be doing that first before they even decide to take action.
Mm-hmm.
But I have one fear. And this one is from Mr. Shera when she comes. Didn't our government spend over $25 billion to build out Pico? Which is about half of the national budget for the year. Now look at that, right? And look at the situation with the breakfast shed. Whose loans ain't 25 million, which is 1,000 or 25 million. And you're railroading these people to get rid of it. We live in a mad system, and we have to understand that, because as you all had rightfully said, 6% for a UE professor versus 4% for a police officer versus 10% for a public servant, a daily paid worker.
Mm-hmm.
That is 3 different sets of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because a university professor earning about $30,000 to $40,000 a month, where a school teacher might be making about 18, and a daily paid worker might be making about 5. So when you say 10% across the board, that really is something fair. Everybody can't get the same percentage. Because 7% for a university professor or 6% is way more than 10% for a daily paid worker. And the last thing I want to leave you with here, with the madness that we're in, right? You have an enterprise like Carl. You're paying an executive $50,000 and $60,000 a month. And after 3 or 4 years, you're telling me the organization $1 billion in loss. How can we justify these salaries that we pay some of these people and these enterprises making a loss? I listen off you. Thanks for the opportunity to call, contribute, good program as usual.
Thanks.
Happy Easter.
Thanks, caller. Happy Easter to you too. Yes, I should have mentioned, I intended to bring up the fact that yes, the other union got 10%. I still don't know what that actually means, as opposed to 10% from the PSA, as opposed to, 4%, 5% here. Actual figures, they don't want to talk about that. That's interesting. Carl, we could be a little bit fairer with regards to the leadership of Carl, but we have Dabidi in the line first. We'll take Dabidi. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Hi, Sean. Morning.
Morning.
Yes, wonderful show as usual, and a meaningful contribution from Arima. He described what is actually going on in the country as madness, and I think that it goes beyond madness here, because there isn't one ministry or agency out there right now that I know could get a passing grade as far as governance is concerned. So a lot of decisions are being made, and we are going down a slippery slope, and we are heading towards, I wouldn't say bankruptcy, but we are going towards being bailed out by the IMF. And I think that is one of the worst things refinancing any country they would like to do. I don't know. I see Barbados did it a few years ago, and they came out all right, But they didn't come out all right because they had to displace a few thousand school teachers, public servants. So the conditionalities that comes with the IMF, I don't think any of us would like to to experience it. But I really wish that we could have better governance in this country, and it is really, really and truly madness. Lovely program. Thanks for the opportunity, and you all have a nice day.
Thanks, Scholar. Other islands coming out or doing well economically is relative, because the comparisons with regards to the cost of living and what's available on the shelves and certain economic factors that maybe we don't necessarily go deep enough when we want to compare the islands against each other. Life in TNT might still be easier in a lot of ways. Not every way, but in a lot of ways.
It is easier.
Right?
I have a colleague who came from Barbados, who's living in Barbados. And when he comes to Trinidad, he says, you all really don't know what you all have. Right?
No, we don't.
He said that when they spend their EC dollars in Barbados or the US dollars, when they go in Barbados, when they spend the Bajan dollar US, he said when we come in Trinidad, when he come in Trinidad, he's hopeful that when he sees a lot of why these things are not on his shelf. We take for granted what is presently on our shelves, and we complain too much. No, I'm not saying that some persons are justified, right? Because things are not as easy for everyone across the board. There are some who have it difficult. But holistically, we do not have a major issue when it comes to what is available for us on our shelves.
It depends on your economic bracket, because I was speaking to Avenel Williams from ICNTT Cause, and she was talking about trying to get a job to help someone get out of a domestic abuse situation, I believe. And a job and a place to live. They got the job, they got the place to live. The problem was the rent for the place to live was like $1,500. And the salary was only 2,000 something.
So that brings.
And this is a woman with kids, right?
So it brings into perspective not what is available, but the ability to purchase what is available.
But also the prices of things in Barbados or on other islands, just the expense, the cost of living is a lot higher.
Realistically, there is availability. What is challenging many persons, their ability or their purchasing power, because some have more than some. Some could go beyond their what is available on the shelves and go to the higher end. Some cannot go to the higher end because they have to manage within their means. When it comes to other aspects of housing and accommodation, shelter is difficult. Not everybody has a house. Low-income houses are no longer is not considered low-income house.
Yes.
And these are so many things we have to look at, because when we talk about low-income earners, what is considered low-income earners here? Because $1 million for a property and beyond is not realistically low-income residents.
They talk about that even in the States. I mean, real estate is its own other animal, because more and more you see videos talking about the price of a house back in the 40s and 50s, where it might have been either the fraction of a paycheck, or you might maybe take 2 months, and then you could afford to get the house outright. Whereas now, it's like you have a mortgage that's lasting for years and years and years, and if you're not careful, you might die and leave the mortgage with your kids.
But it's also exacerbated by our migrant population, because when we had let's say about 3 or 4 years ago, when we didn't have the vast amount of migrants coming into Trinidad and Tobago, but by the numbers, even then, low-income housing was challenging, and rent was also challenging for persons to find properties to rent. Take what is taking place with our migrant population, who is coming in here, who come in here because of the circumstances. I'm not discussing their circumstances. I'm just using the analogy to show that with the limited resources in terms of housing, and I'm talking about rental properties where persons have to get rent, it is now taken up by another a different population.
Yeah.
So it's making it much more difficult.
Well,
to provide housing for even the residents as well as the now we're talking about the immigrant population.
See, this is one of the issues where one of the issues is with issues, people want to have emotional reactions, right? Not necessarily understand. I have no problem if you want to undertake the negative consequences as a price of doing good. But I feel as though a lot of times people don't understand there will be negative consequences potentially if things are not managed properly. And it's not about illegal immigrants, there's negative consequences. There's negative consequences when there's too many and you can't absorb them with regards to jobs and healthcare and housing and food supply.
And they also take they also take a portion of your locals, your citizens' ability to access that because they are also part of it now.
Yes.
So this is not about criticizing or being critical to migrants. They have the issue. They are entitled to survive with have a life and have some level of stability. So that is not the issue. But we have allowed certain things to happen, and because of our national security, poor infrastructure when it comes to our porous borders and ability to manage that aspect of it.
Because in a way, we benefit from the migrants. It's just that we did not manage the situation responsibly. So there are issues because of the irresponsibility, not because of the migrants.
So the argument is that who's really benefiting from the migrants? Is it the individuals? Because individuals have the rent. And then we come back to the whole question about who's paying the taxes. People are complaining about rental properties and rental taxes.
Well, part of it is
also businesses who hire in.
Well, here's the
migrants, are they paying NIS and the contributions that's supposed to be paid?
I understand that, but labor had an issue long before.
Yes.
Where government became too much of an employer, too much of a eat a food employer, regardless of who's in power, right? And you saw labor issues for certain industries and certain small businesses way back in 2008, 2009. I don't know if it started before that, right? But I'm talking about from Tobago to El Socorro and down south and et cetera, right? Jobs like day mechanics and all sorts of technicians and day laborers and the like, you know. There are certain jobs that Trinbagonians just wanted to do less and less because, hey, I'll just get a government work and that's a real job and I don't need to work in your restaurant, I don't need to work in your mall kiosk.
Yes.
Right? So on some level, it's an imperfect solution because, again, it wasn't managed properly, but certain small businesses did benefit from getting workers to do the jobs they just at times seemingly couldn't get people to do.
So true.
So we have San Fernando on the line. Caller, good morning. You on here?
Good morning, Sean.
Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Ali.
Morning, sir.
Mr. Ali, let me first say to you, the last time you was on the program, and we had a little brouhaha.
What are you talking about?
Now, this is how it is supposed to be, because we can't solve the problem if we don't have a brouhaha, and you have your views and I have my views. So I love when they come on the program and we could do this, because a lot of this is how Trinidad and Tobago going to solve or going to get suggestions of how to solve the problems. So that is why I give you a fair warning before.
You go right, you go right ahead. You are free to voice your opinions.
Right. So today, okay, we have a couple issues. The first one is this what you all spoke about, the probation amendment. I am afraid that, you see, the legislature does their job. Okay, so they bring an amendment bill. The problem in Trinidad and Tobago is after that is done at that level, all the supporting aspects to make this successful is where we fall down. but we continue to fall down.
Operationalization.
And as Dabadi said, morning Dabadi, as Dabadi said, all the institutions going to get a failing grade if you do an assessment. And it is fixed. It's about fixing these things. The nursing situation. This is part of a worldwide issue. There is a worldwide shortage of nurses. A worldwide shortage of nurses. And we fall into the same category. Our problem is that we don't have, and people need to understand this. And you could blame the government how much you want. We just don't have the financial resources anymore. We don't. And as Sean said, what you're going to pick. You're going to say, you're going to get the money, education more money. You're going to take away money from this one. And we don't have the funds. This is a reality now, you know. The fact that the government gave the PSA 10%, and in December they gave them what do you call it? Was it December? Yes, they gave them a 20,000, and they still haven't finished that negotiation because they're still working on non-cash. So the people, it is incomplete, even though they come up with a 10%, and this is what's happening all over. There is not enough money. And I disagreed with the government giving them 10% in the first place. Because you all know you all couldn't afford it. Or we couldn't afford it. I'm going to put it this way. The last thing is Sean and I pet peeve. Tourism and Tobago and Carl. This issue with Carl. Caribbean Airlines has not been allowed by the state to operate as a business. They have been commingling all kinds of stuff. The air bridge is not a profit-making entity. It is not. And if they want to continue operating air bridge too, and they want Carl to be successful, then you need to separate Carl from the air bridge. You need to put a big wall in between there. The air bridge is the air bridge, and let some other entity handle the air bridge. If it's a subsidiary of Carl, and let the state pay for it. Because as it is now, this thing has been brewing a long time, and this deficit that Carl has, this present Prime Minister, rightly so, said Carl cannot operate at a loss. Let me see what's happening here. Let me see the numbers. And this has been allowed to happen, and it's not only the air bridge. Carl has subsidized travel within the Caribbean. They have subsidized travel, and it is a lot deeper than you all understand. This was not just a mismanagement of an airline issue. This is a fundamental, how would I call it? This was a policy ingrained within the fabric of the Caribbean to allow for Trinidad and Tobago to carry that burden. A lot of people don't understand that. That is why Carl is in the position it is. But where we are now, the government can't afford to run a deficit with Carl as well. Because we already have a $9 billion deficit, and it's going to go up to, I suspect, when the media review comes, it's going to be more. So Trinidad and Tobago, you all have to buckle down. You all have to now understand that all the years of the state or our petroleum resources carrying Trinidad and Tobago by subsidy, and we have allowed that subsidy to become ingrained in how we live. So to move it in any way or any form is going to cause pain. But you have to take the pain, you know. We have to take the pain if we want to get better. If you want to get a transfusion, you have to take that pain and stick in a needle into your vein. This is where we are. So, gentlemen, you all have a good weekend. Mr. Ali, I still love you, even though I just get on your heart side. Get them hard on you something.
No love
Have a
lost.
good
No
weekend,
love
gentlemen.
lost.
Thank you, Mr. Sanford.
Have a good weekend.
You too.
Same to you. All right. I'll just go over some quick points. I don't necessarily think the legislature is just their job. I think we get what we pay for, because there's a lot of legislation I would like to see, including, stuff to fix noise pollution, right? Didn't the Prime Minister, she said she was going to do it. Stop complaining that she's not doing it. She said she was going to do it. I ain't see it yet.
But, Sean, I keep saying, legislation is one part of it. So you
And
could
then
put the
legislation,
legislation, if there is no mechanism for operationalization of the legislation, it becomes non-effective.
The big question, Mr. Sanford, is how all of a sudden they hired potentially 100 nurses. Right? I don't know if, again, they took money from somewhere else to finance this hiring, but they just, where did these nurses come from? How much experience did they have? I don't know. I hope that there's no unintended consequences here. I'll speak about the Carl thing, but we do have Clarkson Bay. So we'll take a call first. Clarkson Bay, good morning, you're on here.
Yeah.
Morning.
Yeah. Hi. Good morning, Sean, and to the officer there. You see, sooner or later things must catch up with us in this country. You see the lies, you see when people lie, and people just watching your face and lie a lot, and they don't want to be responsible for that. They don't want to be responsible. And you see, some of us, we know they're lying. You understand? And the government that they know they can't afford. They know that. You understand? But they will come and tell the people that. How they could come and tell the people that, we can't afford this because they don't have that and they don't have this. So they had to now fight up in all forms and fashion to try to make ends meet, which is impossible. Rather than you come out and tell people truth. But you see, when you're accustomed to lying and getting through with it, it's shameful now for you to come and tell people truth. And even it's shameful to come and accept, hey, this is what it is. You understand? So this is the problem that we end up with. You understand? All because our people don't want to be truthful. You understand? And this is where we country at, We lie so much to the population. Just like we had Donald Trump, the media telling the world now that Donald Trump is lying. He's lying all over. They can't trust him. And he's a president that we want to worship and say that, oh yes, this is the great America. And you lying to the people. People seeing you for what you is. It must come out eventually. People will recognize, hey, all this thing was a big lie, boy. You understand? So where we is in this time here now, with the government of the day not able to stand up to what it say because they know they lie. You understand? People started to realize and get disenchanted now. You understand? Because they didn't want to listen to the truth. You understand? So we having all these kind of problems, and that is why you see property tax. Property tax was one of the main things that this government should have never mashed up. You understand? Because everybody, I thought should have make everybody, the big people, small people, everybody pay something. They would have money. You understand? They would have some money. But no, they don't want the people to come out and pay nothing because they give them the intention that, oh, that's your property. And all over the world, we have to pay property tax. Sean, I wish them the best. I wish them the best, but I know unless you start being truthful with the people, you will go right down with problems. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Well, I'll say this. The previous administration at times tried to paint a rose-colored picture, tried to, be very positive. And there is times when that is necessary. To be fair, Dr. Ali, he did say a couple of times, he keeps statements to the effect of things are going to be tough, right? But we only really got some detailed indicator when Mr. Imbert was in a court proceedings and he was asked under oath, I believe, and his answer, I can't remember what the question was basically that's when he said things will be bad for the next couple of years until 2027 when certain oil and gas projects come online, right? Now, I don't know if that time frame is still viable, but I do believe the current government is operating in a similar philosophical way. They're waiting for the same projects, maybe not in the same time frame.
You can't tell me things could be tough when you want to get an increase in salary and actual money.
Well, of course not. Well, technically, Dr. Rowley did do that. He did say things are tough and then increase the salary. That's why they lost the election.
And he also said that I work for my money and I want my money. Yeah. My money will slip out. When you make statements of that nature, and any leader, where if you are telling, you have to lead by example. Yes, things are tough. I understand things are tough, but you can't tell me things are tough, but I want mine. Mm-hmm. And are you entitled to yours?
Because I would argue there's a legitimate case to say no salary increases right now.
Should have.
Across the board. But you can't say that and then take a salary increase yourself.
And then push it aside to say the public servants did that. No, the public servants did that, but you could have a responsibility even
if you were forced to accept the bigger check, you could have donated the money, you could have done something to show leadership.
Policy would have been in place, but you said X, Y, and Z. Now there's a situation where I call across the board, and they are reflective because this administration said that they weren't going to fix that. Using the 10% was dangerous from the onset. Mm-hmm. A softer language might have been in hindsight. In hindsight, I would have said in hindsight.
The problem is they said up front, "Don't worry, we'll find the money."
And that's what I'm saying. In hindsight, we are really we're in a pickle at this point in time.
The thing is, I'll agree with the caller in the sense of yes, the government is following up with the previous administration, trying to sell us rose-colored glasses, right? Meanwhile, the signs of things are not all well, right?
And after we take this caller, I will bring this out. Bring this back to you.
Yeah, and that's why the car situation is even more tenuous now than ever before. We have move on the line caller. Good morning, you're on the air.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Mr. Ashraf.
Morning, sir.
I am thankful that I heard you just a while ago speak again about noise pollution. And I want to say to you and Mr. Ali that, every time a holiday comes around, last weekend, this weekend, to hear people wishing each other, safe holiday. And I keep asking myself, I wonder how many of you all who call in or come on air and have these and makes, wish people these happy weekend. If you don't understand that there are people by the thousands in this country who every long weekend, every holiday, we are cringing because we know that we won't be able to sleep when the night comes. We know that we won't have, it is almost impossible for us to enjoy a quiet day in our neighborhood, which is our right. I want you to understand this. This quiet, peaceful time in our homes is our right. It is not a privilege. And even if even a police officer don't realize that when he's telling the public, oh well, you all have to go to court. It's always that we have to do something. The right of somebody who running a bar or somebody with a car with loud music to play loud music is a privilege. That's not a right. Me as a citizen, I have a right in my house to enjoy peace and quiet. And a lot of people don't seem to understand that. And I want to just make that clear. I want to tell Mr. Ali this. I will never accept the fact that noise pollution hasn't been addressed on an explanation about operationalizing. That is crap, and I'll tell you why it's crap. I have been having a problem 30 plus years in my neighborhood. There are people in the group, CANPAT, which is Citizens Against Noise Pollution TT, 20 years, 15 years, they have been having problems. No one can tell me that all this time could be excused by operationalizing. What this shows me is there are people in Trinidad and Tobago for years just have no conscience, just don't care about the situation, and that is it. This has nothing to do because dealing with noise pollution is not rocket science. It is not difficult. It doesn't cost anything because you don't need decibel meters to have to come to a realization that, hello, nobody has a right at 12 in the night to be playing loud music. Night is for sleeping. The people who don't want to sleep have a right not to sleep. But they don't have a right to humbug who want to sleep. I mean, that is not that what that is brain surgery. And if the people running this country, from the hierarchy of the police service to the attorney general over the past 20 years, can't understand that these people are unfit for office. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The hierarchy of the police service has to be unfit people. Dealing with noise pollution is a crisis. It's a human rights issue. It's a health issue. What is it going to take for these people to understand and just deal with it? There's no operationalization. It's not a problem to implement. There's no problem to implement. These people just don't care. At least this prime minister would have mentioned it, but it seems that it's not only up to her to do it, but there's somebody blocking something somewhere, and those persons must be exposed and they should be removed from office. It is high time that this situation is dealt with, and no more excuses. No more excuses, it's ridiculous. Glaring and ridiculous. Thank you. You all have a good weekend. I hope you all can sleep in the night. I know plenty of people, including myself, up till last night I had to put up with karaoke. I don't know what I'll get tonight. You understand? And there are people in Trinidad and Tobago in the office sitting down, the hierarchy of the police service. I will always call them out. Don't tell me nothing about laws. You all have the authority to go and talk to whoever. If I was a commissioner of police and I, for the last 20 years, hearing people complaining about noise, I would have gone to the attorney general and said, listen, we have to come up with something because we're not looking good. Because they're looking at us to deal with it. It's that simple. Why people can't understand that? Have a good day. Have a good weekend, gentlemen.
Thank you, caller. One thing, Ashraf was talking about new legislation because I mentioned that the Prime Minister promised new legislation to fix the problem because I believe that's needed. And he said, well, you have to operationalize new legislation. Wasn't speaking about the current status quo. Now, with that said, I appreciate that you think that noise pollution can be handled without a noise meter. I'm not entirely sure how that will hold up in the courts. And it seems as though the TTPS is not willing to try. Hence why I think new legislation to change how these things are managed would probably be better than just demanding something from a group of people that for whatever reason, whether you agree with it or not, are not doing it. Right? Whether it's a good reason or it's a bad reason. Whether it's a just reason or it's an unjust reason. You're demanding, you are saying these people are not doing what they're supposed to be doing and I demand for them to do what they're supposed to be doing and that's it. But there's a reason why I have moved on to say the government needs to step in on this. Because it seems as though the complaints of the public is not enough to get the action that you think is required in the situation, whether it's correct or not, right? I'm not casting judgment on that. And on some level, I would imagine there are court precedents that actually works against whether those court precedents are just or unjust. Your line of logic, and that's why, one of the reasons why the police act the way that they act. I don't know if you have anything more to add.
John, we have persons who always use the term that I want to enjoy, I have the right to enjoy my space. I'm comfortable with that. That's your right, right? So a business doesn't have a right to carry on his business.
Well,
there's a balancing act between that.
Yeah.
There's a legal requirement for the individual on how to operate the business. I mean, noise has always been a difficult situation for law enforcement to address. Mova doesn't even want to accept that because it's personal for him. Holistically, it's a challenge for law enforcement to address. This is not the first time you get reports of noise. You go to the person, you ask them to lower the music down. They lower the music down. As soon as you leave, a call come back again that this person increases the music down. You go and come. And when you ask, I'm not saying this is not Mova, so Mova don't get offended. When you ask persons within that community, are you willing to give a statement that this individual is causing a nuisance to you? Because the law requires supporting evidence from the residents, not the police. That is how the law is structured. The police cannot say...
So the police's opinion on the noise...
is irrelevant.
It's irrelevant, right.
They need supporting evidence.
Also, they could say, oh, well, we turned it up momentarily and you just happened to be here. It wasn't this loud the whole time. I know it's a lie.
The police evidence, the police rule would have been that you were called to this location on several occasions when you had cause to speak to Sean about the level of noise. That is what he did. But the other parties who are living in the area have to come and say that this person, when the police came, the noise went up and that they called the police. They have to give that supporting evidence that, listen, these individuals are causing a nuisance in my area. You have to give the evidence because the police cannot say you are causing a nuisance because they can't.
Now,
so
I get it. There should be some capacity for the police to be able to collect evidence or what have you, right? But whatever it is, the situation does not account for all of the possibilities, and these are the constraints that the police are under. So, objective fact, you either have people willing to voice complaints to the police and to give testimony, or you have decibel meters, because if the law says not above a certain decibel,
also
you kind of have to objectively prove.
We have businesses like bars and other facilities, and I don't want to point out bars. We have groceries and other marts that put music outside of their spaces, and it is loud. When licenses are to be renewed, so liquor license, restaurant license, groceries license, the residents have an opportunity to present themselves before the court.
And maybe this is because we see a lot of American TV, right? And we have not updated our laws, but the public doesn't want to hear that.
Because they don't want, they have the opinion that the police can just simply shut it down.
Also, for the wider law enforcement situation, we don't have the time. It's not, we don't have the time. I'm trying to wrap this up. But for the wider law enforcement situation, I understand what Movan and what he's going through is very real. But not every complaint is going to be from a reliable victim. And I'll just leave that there, right? What he is going through is very real. But the system is not just limited that we could always safely assume that it's a good faith call all the time. Now, we don't have time. I did need to wrap up the Carl situation because I did want to say a couple things. First of all, Carl's difficulties are compounded with cost of fuel. That it has been fluctuating with the price of oil and gas, right? But the real scary part is, hey, we can't afford X, we can't afford Y. How are we going to afford a bailout on the national carrier? And then now, it goes back to what Mr. Sarfan is saying. We're losing money on the air bridge. And the Chief Secretary seems to think that the gains on the air bridge are greater than the losses. That's fine. Well, are the people who are making the economic profits, can they afford to foot the bill? Because we've now potentially reached a point where we have to ask, can the government afford to foot this bill?
And I'm sure we're closing off now. There has to come a reality where we made a statement that Petrotrin cannot function in that capacity. We're not making any, it's not profitable. Good?
I mean, to be fair, that seemingly was not quite accurate.
No,
based on hindsight.
I'm just using an analogy. There's a point in time where you have to decide on how we're going to move our monies around. We are strapped for financial finances. Is it profitable? But because what is the volume? What is the volume on the numbers of persons using the air bridge on a regular basis to
The problem is it's mostly one way, but right? So the fuel cost on the return leg is always a loss-making venture. But here's the thing. According to Mr. San Fernando, or I can't remember if it was him or somebody else, we subsidize regional travel. All that's well and good, but you know what's the most telling thing of it all? When we need airlines to bring in tourists, do we tell Cal do it, or do we ask another airline to do it? Why? Because maybe if we were making profit off of international routes, we would have had profit that could have covered the losses made on the domestic and regional routes. But we're not thinking long term. All right, we're going to end that there. I just have one last thing to say. Of course, there was a murder, I don't know if you saw it, with regards to the 11-month-old,
unfortunately,
2 nights ago, and his father. Now, members of the public have been questioning government's inaction and commenting and directing their comments towards the Minister of Homeland Security. And similar to our previous commissioner earlier, Edward Christopher, I have no issue if you want to complain about job performance. But there comes a point in time where do they deserve the treatment that they get because they have one, where's Mr. Intelligence? Or another one, crime is at its highest and UNC supporters don't have a problem with that because yellow is the code. Now, to some extent, I have an issue with statements like this because they're not constructive. Listen, I am not the Minister of Homeland Security's biggest fan. I'm pretty sure we have made, you have witnessed my frustration with that individual. I have done so, I've aired it out publicly. But insulting him, it might make you feel happy in the moment, but all it does is just show maybe I don't need to take you seriously, and that's the minister's mindset. And I can't fault him for that. His response was, I love you all. And he moved on.
And I think that at some point in time, I think the minister is learning that not every statement or every comment made against him, he needs to put a statement out or give a narrative towards it. This is an emotional situation right now where the family lost, it's a baby, right? There's no proper statement that you can make that would not arouse emotions on either side. Sometimes it's better to leave it here. We know that is not, he fully aware that that is not a situation that he could probably comment properly. I'm sure he's empathizing with everybody when he says he would, I love you all, right? Because that's as much as he can say with it because the family is hurting. The bigger problem that we have is crime holistically. And this is where I think is the commissioner of police has to deal with it because the minister is only the administrator of these organizations. Who has to operationalize it is the commissioner, and I'm saying that whether the measures that is being put in place is getting the value that we see, and if we see it, and that's for another conversation we got to do next week. But it's bigger than that. Over this weekend, Sean, the same narrative that we're talking about, if we want to see that we want to operate within the law, right? You expect to have a lot of traffic issues this weekend and a lot of police officers on the street dealing with persons who are traversing the streets. Because just like you and I, both the criminal elements and persons who are involved in crime will take opportunities to go to the areas where a lot of persons are involved, culminated to have some good times, to look for opportunities. So in that light, expect to be a little inconvenience because at the end of the day, you want to enjoy yourself. I expect to be inconvenienced. So if I know I don't want to be in the full brunt of it, I manage myself when I want to go and when I don't want to go. Right?
I know sometimes I could get too sarcastic, but I do try to limit my sarcasm to things that politicians do or say are not just who they are. I take an issue with someone using the term small pen. I don't find a response to that kind of talk and go down that path myself, right? When I spoke about Watson Duke, I merely pointed out things he did. Now, yes, It is Easter, so I want to wish everyone happy Easter. Have a good weekend. Those who aren't Christian still have a good weekend. Yes, I appreciate Mr. Mova. It's a holiday time, so things are going to get ridiculous. I mean, even in hotels in Tobago at times, things could get ridiculous. And I know you don't want to hear this, but I also believe part of the problem is we have culturally accepted too much slackness with regards to noise pollution. And that's one of the reasons why I think the leaders of the country have to step up and do something concrete about it. And when they did do the ban, Ashraf did say he hoped that we could have the wider conversation. And I was very skeptical because what I probably instinctively thought would have happened came to pass. We got a dog and pony show, we got some stuff for the cameras, and now it's radio silence. Now it's no longer a priority or anything being mentioned again. Maybe they'll bring it up soon. Hopefully they will. I won't hold my breath, to be honest. This probably won't be an issue for the politicians until next carnival, in which case it still won't be resolved. Thanks to the callers, though, all of the callers. Thanks, Ashraf, for joining me.
And Trinidad and Tobago, be safe on the roads. Just remember, don't drive for yourself. Drive for the others.
Oh, gosh. Hey. They had a police officer that hit another police officer.
Unfortunately.
And it goes back to example and culture, right? I'm not trying to put through a dig at the service, but it's just a kind of show, hey, we don't know. We need to all understand. We don't know when is the one time we're going to get into an accident. Drive more responsibly, folks. Stay safe. Have a good weekend. Have a good Easter. Enjoy yourselves responsibly. Be nice. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
WESN